Hey everybody, Ketwolski here, checking back in again, kind of like I did with part one of this video series. This is an audio only interview with, Mike McMahan. Spoilers are a heavy for Lower Decks Season 1. I hope that you guys and gals enjoyed part 1. This is the second part of that. We get through a lot of really, really great content. I hope that you enjoyed the first one, and hope that you enjoyed this second one. Let me know down in the comments below, of course, what you thought about that. So go ahead and listen up. Again, this is a bit like a podcast type situation, so turn it on in the background, simply enjoy it, and yeah, I can't wait to hear you guys' feedback. Which is good. I mean, that's kind of what you want. You want it to be thematically close to each other, but I don't want... I'm speaking as a fan of the show and as an audience member. I don't want to see the same thing twice. I want to see, okay, yeah, you've shown me what you've got. You've proven that you've got the chops. You've shown me that you can make these characters and make me feel something for them, and I'm invested. Now show me more. Like, go and do something different with them.
Well, there's also, like, when you go and watch all the animated shows, too, and you go second season, it's like, oh, the art takes a leap forward too.
Yes.
And our art team is killing it right now. Like nice. Every single set of dailies of backgrounds and character designs and just everything I'm seeing is they're taking everything they did first season and they're just like, they're making it even more beautiful and rich, and the lighting and the color and just everything is like blowing me away. I'm so impressed with what they're doing. So when that all comes together and we get that new score by Chris Westlake on there and just everything put together, it's going to just be such a fucking party. I can't wait.
And that's the thing that fucking, and maybe you can explain this to me because you obviously are in the fucking animation business. One of the big issues that people complained about for Lower Decks when it was airing from like a very fringe group of individuals that were watching it, I guess, for pain. I don't know what they were doing because they didn't seem to like it. But one of the things that people kept, like, they were saying is, oh, this animation is terrible. And I'm like, how can you say the animation? Like, when I look at the terraforming animation where the two ships, the Durango and the Cerritos, are being terraformed, like, that animation is beautifully done and is so complex and is crazy. When I see episodes like that and I'm like, and people are like, this animation's terrible. Like, what the, I don't even know what the fuck that means. Like, what do they, I don't even understand it.
I mean, listen, yeah, I have opinion about that group of people. I mean, part of me marvels at the I don't even know the word for it, but when you have somebody online telling you in the same breath that your animation style is something they've seen before, but they also are draping themselves in anime and love anime. Yeah. Like I don't, like, I'm sorry that Lower Decks doesn't look like anime. Like, I didn't grow up watching anime. I grew up watching The Simpsons. Like,
that's not the show you're making.
Rick and Morty. You know, I'm making a comedy. There's not a lot of famous, popular Western anime comedies. Like, I have some favorite animes, but the style of anime is not the style for this show. It's just not the type of story we're telling. That me personally, I don't feel like that. So, you know, you get these people that are like, everybody's kind of an armchair animation expert. You know what I mean?
Suddenly
like,
now everybody is. Right, yeah.
Yeah, but the thing that they are spotting, the thing that they feel brilliant, like, all these people think that there's a guy in like a green brimmed visor sitting at CBS with a cigar being like, you know how we can make money? Let's make The Simpsons or the Rick and Morty, but we'll put them in the Star Trek, you know?
And he's smoking a big giant cigar. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like, no, it's actually the opposite. Like, CBS is like, does not want to fuck with Star Trek. They know Star Trek is good. They know people have a huge emotional connection to it. Yeah. And any new Star Trek they make is like, they are not, they know what Star Trek fans are like, you know, like it has to have a really good reason why it is that way. And for Lower Deck specifically, I had to go into many, many meetings, and my opinion on it was, listen, the type of Star Trek that I want to make, the backgrounds and the designs and the ships need to look beautiful in sci-fi, and the character designs need to look like they live in primetime animated Western comedy, because I want the human element, the comedic element, to be visual from the second you see it on an ad or a billboard. Yep. I want you to know that this is a comedy and that the people that are saying things can be funny so that it doesn't feel like it's coming out of left field. But what I love about Rick and Morty, the reason people say it looks like Rick and Morty, which probably without even realizing it, is that the designs in Rick and Morty have big white expressive eyes, and they look like a variation of kind of like, you know, the primetime animated format in a way, but the sci-fi of it looks really beholden and careful and awesome to cool cinematic sci-fi. And I really, really like that. I like putting comedic characters in high stakes cinematic, non-comedic backgrounds. And the same thing with the music. Like Chris is one of my closest friends. My kids call him Uncle Chris. And as a composer, I think he's brilliant. Yeah. But one of the rules I gave him is that the music never gets to be in on the joke. The music is that needs to be composed and performed like this is a serious Star Trek show, so that it plays like how the ship has to look great. You know, the ship doesn't get to look funny, but Mariner and Boimler get to look funny. And for some reason, that's this alchemy that helps the stakes. That's what helps the stories. That's what helps you as an audience believe that you're watching a show that matters to the characters in it, but then also they get to be funny and they get to have fun.
Yeah.
So all those people online who were like, oh, I think I've seen this before because they were looking at one still image. You know, I don't know what to tell them. Like right. when they announce a new show, you know, from other animation studios that haven't made an entirely, like, there's reasons to hate everything. Like, what if it had been rotoscoped? People would have been like, rotoscoped.
Right, they would have been mad too.
You know,
right. Exactly.
Yeah, like, what, you know, if you want to push the limits of animation, like, go watch all this amazing Adult Swim stuff. You know, like,
yeah,
Tom Goes to the Mayor. I'm not seeing a lot of people beg for more of that. Like, not everything has to like. Listen, we're already making a good animated comedic 90s era Star Trek show. It never came into my mind that I should also challenge an audience into a new style of animation that they had never seen.
What do you mean?
Before.
What the fuck are you talking about? You didn't want to do everything all at once? What's wrong with you? Yeah. Come on.
I don't know. It's, you know, like when we're doing comedy, you try to work with the familiar and then you also try to surprise people, like, but again, that being said, dude, I super don't care. Like, yeah, people are going to complain no matter what on the internet. People are going to be upset. Yeah. I do feel bad every once in a while. Somebody will show up in my feed and be like, oh my God, I heard this show was terrible, but I love it. Like, why did people crap on it? And my answer, like, I don't answer them because my answer to that is, I don't know. I guess they're just doing that on everything. Like, I don't know where you're getting your sources from. Personally, when I check out a new TV show, I don't go look up reviews of it first. I just put it on. So,
right.
You know,
yeah. I've never, like, maybe afterwards, like, I'll watch somebody's breakdown or thoughts on it, but not before. You know what I mean? Like, that's bizarre. Sure. You know, I feel like that is weird. And yeah, I mean, yeah, I absolutely, I really do appreciate your perspective on that, because it was a question that was coming up quite a bit, and I don't have any experience in the field, so I don't know how to appropriately respond to it, or to even really, like I said, like, I don't even understand what the complaint actually means, because to me, when I see this show, it looks beautiful and it's well animated and everything looks great. I'm going to hit you right now. I'm going to hit you with something hard really quickly. I did notice an editing mistake inside of one of the episodes with the sand, where Tendi was trying to activate the replicator.
You want to see another editing mistake? You want to see another animation mistake?
Hit me with it. Watch
any episode of The Simpsons ever made.
Oh, I know. I'm just fucking with you, man.
If everybody online wants to be, how about this? When I used to work at South Park, the episode if you want to see what an episode of South Park really looks like, go and look at the ripped versions that people recorded off of DVRs the night they aired, because the version that goes up on streaming or DVD is the version they clean up after air.
Yeah.
They make that show in 6 fucking days. There's going to just be animation error. It's like, absolutely, this happens in layers, people. Yeah. Like, in fact, I know. All the layers, there's a scene in, and I'm not mad at you. It's just so funny. Cause like, of course everybody becomes armchair. Everybody wants the show faster, and everybody wants the show to have no mistakes. Well, guess what, guys? You know, and there's stuff where it's like, there's a scene in the bar, I think, where some people aren't sitting on chairs, which are drawn. Nobody drew a character sitting on nothing. It's just that at some point during the QC process or something, one layer in one part, like in 30 frames of one scene, some layer got turned off. Like there was some glitch. Right. So we had seen that scene a million times, but at some point, some stool way off in the background. And then I've seen people tweeting at me being like, do you expect me to watch a show like this? And I'm like, motherfucker, I don't know. He's sitting on an invisible stool. Get fucked.
It's a cloak stool. It's a Romulan stool, okay?
But it's funny, like the amount of times we see these episodes and then the thing you catch at the last second, like, oh my God, these people on the internet think that they know what's going on. Fucking keep track of animated ranking pips, you pieces of shit. You know how fucking hard it is?
No, I can't imagine how fucking hard it is. I remember
hundreds of artists keeping the pips straight.
There was I remember this. This is so funny that you bring up the pips thing, because I remember people were freaking the fuck out about, there's a shot of when Rutherford's kind of like moving between all of the different sections. There's a shot of Billups, and he's inside of engineering, and in the background, like way in the fucking back, there's an individual with one more rank pip than Billups has. And I remember people were freaking out. They're like, is he not the chief engineer? Who's that? What's going on? This show is... And I'm like, what are y'all... Like, oh my God.
Listen,
it is
a lot of the times, not only is it like, you should see the amount of times we've caught people with 4 pips just walking around the ship like, guys, you can't piss quick.
Oh, she got promoted.
Like, what is happening? 4 pips? Are you out of your mind? And then other times we had to be like, you know that there's like sub-lieutenants and there's chiefs, and like, you know, when you're building every single thing, it's not like there's a costuming department. You know what I mean? Like every single thing is built. And then on top of that, we see a lot of people being like, why aren't there more different bodies and to like shapes? And for us, a lot of the time, you know, animation is only able to be accomplished because of reuse. Like, oh, can we reuse this stuff? Can we redress this room? Can we put a different head on this body? So like, of a first season show where everything is being created, that came down to a lot of the time of like, okay, we'll just use these bodies and put different heads on them, and like, you know, and go from there.
Exactly. Right.
So it's just so funny. The amount of shit we got right is insane to me, how good it looked. Like,
oh yeah, for sure.
You know, for there being one missing stool and one extra pip, the amazing work by our whole team across the board, but especially the folks that were doing the composite cleanup, all the stuff that like makes the episode what it is, 100% during COVID. Not a single episode finished before COVID locked us all down. Like the artists at Titmouse, the animation company that makes the show, like really did a spectacular job. And you know, every time I see people complaining about something in the show, I just get so like, I'm like, you can say the show isn't funny and that I'm an idiot, but the second you start talking shit about my artist, I'm like, get the fuck you.
Yeah, you can get fucked, dude. I mean, there's so many beautiful things in there, and that's why I bring up the sand thing. Obviously, I'm just joking with you, but it's like people, like, they get into these weird things, and it's like, instead of like even celebrating like some of the goofs or gaffes, because that used to be like a thing where it was like kind of like a fun like little thing, like, you know, oh, it's the Lord of the Rings, but there's also a white pickup truck in the background, you know, it's like this fun like little gaff, like it's not a big
TOS
deal.
Has so much of it too. It's
you mean where they got Kirk's middle name wrong? Yeah, they've got plenty of gaffes.
I mean, like just scene to scene, scene to scene, just entire things and people changing.
Like, haircuts are moving around. Yeah, exactly.
All their cigarette ash changing length. But no, I mean, listen, like at the same time, you're releasing something and like people are going in and looking for, like, I've never worked on a show where people are like cracking their knuckles, sitting down and being like, all right, time to find things that I can go onto my monetized YouTube and pause the show and presentationally sigh and put my hand in my head and put my hand against my head and be like, wow, are we really expected to believe? And it's like, no, dude, because we're not making this for somebody else's monetized show to pick apart. Like, you could do that for anything. Like, go back to anything you've liked in your entire life, and you can find reasons to tell people it's garbage. You know,
absolutely.
We're not making this. Again, we're making the show for me. Like, the second the show makes me love it, that's when it's ready for everybody else to see. That's the only barometer I have. I hate to tell you this, all the Star Trek fans out there, I love you to death, but I'm not making the show for you. I'm making the show in hopes that you like it, but I'm making the show for me so that the show always feels like it's being made with a certain point of view, that it's being made in a way that it's being crafted, that it's not something that's taking in all this information and trying to adjust itself to like make the most people happy. Like, the one criticism I'll take on Lower Decks, just happily, I'll eat it up, is that this is not a broad show. some people aren't going to understand every joke.
Yeah, it's very niche in that regard, some of the jokes. Yeah.
And by the way, some people, I hear a lot of people, like, we made it so that if you'd never seen Star Trek before, you could still be enjoying it, and it just sounds like a bunch of sci-fi fucking gobbledygook, which is what Rick and Morty is. Like, Rick and Morty has aliens called like Glarnars and Rarbars.
Right,
and,
it doesn't really matter.
Like, that stuff,
it's ultimately
not important.
Matter. Right, it doesn't matter. And I'll tell you right now, with 100% certainty, a lot of the people that I know in my real life that are not Star Trek fans, and they've just recently started to get into the new shows coming out, they all watched Lower Decks, and none of them felt like they were lost at all. None of them felt like they didn't get it.
You don't have to know who Roga Danar is to know that Boimler's a dipshit for thinking he's cooler than Khan, because that's what Mariner is saying.
Right.
You know?
Right. Yes. Right. And that's the thing. Right. You don't need to know. And she's like really laying into him about it. Right. That's not the point. Is that you don't need to know who Roga Danar is. The point is that it's just a silly conversation.
Yeah.
And it's funny.
And like, there's something in writing called downbeats. You know what a downbeat is?
I don't. Explain.
So you're coming in on a scene. You just want to have a little bit of a downbeat, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you want to just have this little moment where characters are going about their everyday lives before somebody runs in and goes, "There's a pie eating contest," and then suddenly the pie eating contest story starts, right?
Yeah.
So in any other show, the downbeats are usually like, "Hey, did you see the Cubs play the other day?" "No, I didn't, because they always lose." There's like always like some little Frasier-y moment of a downbeat, right?
Yeah, it's good. Yeah.
On Lower Decks, the joy of the downbeats are that for any new audience who's never seen Star Trek, the part of the scene that doesn't matter, the part of the scene where it's just two people going about their day, and you just want to get that, like, they're in a moment of normalcy, they're in a moment of non-heightened, non-stakes, because the story hasn't started yet.
Yeah.
So they could be talking about apple muffins, or they could be talking about exercise, or they could be talking about colleges they want to apply to, or whatever the fuck in a regular show it could be.
Right.
On Lower Decks, they're talking about Roga Danar.
Yeah.
Like,
they're talking about Roga Danar. They're making sounds of what the warp cores sound like.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
They're doing like the writers and I love finding inconsequential downbeats.
Yeah.
That would only exist in Starfleet, and then on top of that in a comedy, and I think like a lot of people who watch the show who are like, "Am I expected to believe that's a joke?" And you're like, dude, first off, I don't expect you to believe anything, and also that wasn't a joke. It's just you're bristling at people who are having a great time making a Star Trek show.
Yes, right. And so I will tell you this, I'll speak very frankly about it, which is one of the larger complaints levied against specifically Star Trek Discovery is that people feel as though they're not appreciating the lore of Star Trek, which that's a whole separate debate to get into. But that's a very powerful, strong argument that people are making. I don't necessarily agree with that, but that's something that's very, very strongly out there. That's a very thing that people use a lot of. I would say that for Lower Decks, that argument fell very flat, I would say, probably after the first, maybe second episode. That argument kind of went away. People were saying it prior to the show coming out. But the passion and the love that your creative team and that you have for Star Trek is very, very evident on the screen, both in the props and in the jokes and just with the things that you're doing. And I think perfectly encapsulated all that, which is, of course, you include in the Titan at the end, because you just understood, like, what's something that I can do that everyone's going to love, that I'm going to love? Well, let's bring in fucking Riker and the Titan, So like the whole thing it exudes your passion there.
Yeah. I mean, again, it's the Maserati,
Right.
It's why make a Star Trek show, a thing that I've always wanted to do, that I literally wrote a Star Trek book, and in it I wrote, well, they'll never give me a Star Trek show. So guys, if you ever want a Star Trek show, make sure to say all the time that you're never going to get one, because then you'll look like an idiot when you do.
Right.
But yeah, like for me, it's like, every show is different. I actually think that Discovery is brilliant and is doing something really different and amazing. And it's not a show I could ever write or make, which is partially why I think it's awesome. Like, I don't know what they're doing and I don't see what they're doing. Like, I only think in comedy brain in a way.
Yeah.
And so for me, it's like, oh wow, I'm getting to do, I see some people complaining where they're like, Lower Decks has to stop proving that it's a Star Trek show. It's like, yeah, dude, you said we weren't a Star Trek show in the first place, and I'm not proving to anybody I'm a Star Trek show. I'm swimming around in the Star Trek pool, like you know what it's like? No. Forget that pool bullshit.
Fuck the pool analogy.
Fuck the pool analogy. I'm in the Star Trek cash grab machine, and all the Star Trek stuff is whirling around me.
Oh, yeah.
And at any moment, my show could get canceled because people said it didn't look enough like anime. And before that happens, I'm grabbing at the Star Trek shit that they're going to let me get away with. And as I emerge from like the cash spinning tornado tube, I'm like, my arms are like held against my chest, brimming with all of the Star Trek shit I can cram in there because I'm having a blast doing it, you know? And I think for me, the reason it feels like we're paying attention to lore is I just have like a basic set of like TNG era rules that I know you have to have for an animated comedy to feel like a Star Trek show. Otherwise, it just wouldn't feel like it, right? Yes. For Discovery and those shows, like they're building this whole live action world with like characters that are human beings in Starfleet, like human actors, you know, like they kind of don't have to tell you guys that a bunch of drawings that are sitting in a room are in Starfleet, you know, like we have to do that all the time. So there's a part of me that's like, we only earn these stories and these characters and this world we've built if we utilize enough of what's come before. Otherwise, we're not doing a new version of that. Like we're not doing the lower decks of something that existed, you know? Yeah. Discovery's like in whole different time periods that we haven't seen before on a whole new ship. Like ours is cheekily derivative. And if we're going to be playing in that sandbox, it has to seem like it's a box full of sand. Like if we had changed that, then it just wouldn't have felt like a Star Trek show anymore, right? So I think that like, it wasn't really about lore to me. It was a lot about what are the baseline things you have to have in a Star Trek show in order to start bending it, you know? Like for the jokes to land, for these things to make sense, for these stakes to make sense.
Right, which I guess that actually makes that's actually a really good analogy with a sandbox piece there, because I feel like if you look at like the Discovery sandbox, they're building kind of a very specific style. They're building a traditional, sand castle, whereas you were given a sand castle and you're like, what if I could turn this into a sand castle hotel? And how else could I break this into a different ways that is utilizing the same components, but in a different construct? And I felt like the show really captured that in a lot of ways, because not just in a comedic sense, but also just in general, like the construct of the T-88s, right? I'll use that as a reference point, which is like they would get pumped about the idea of new tricorders coming out that can do cool shit that the other tricorders can't. You know, like that is something that would happen to a lower decks crew that uses these things all the time, but that doesn't translate necessarily super well to a more traditional show like Discovery. Like, can people get really jazzed about the tricorders? I mean, maybe, but it would feel a little bit strange from a live action perspective. But in an animated format,
for like a scene or like a downbeat for them. But yeah, for us,
it's a whole
like comedy
subplot
and drama.
Right. It's a whole subplot.
I had a professor in college, Wendy McLeod, who once put it like, if you're writing a drama and somebody's taking a cab to get somewhere, they just hand cash to the cab driver and get out of the cab and go. And if you're writing a comedy, they get there and then they hand cash to the cab driver and they need their change, but the cab driver doesn't want to give them change. And it's like those little moments can suddenly become more comedic and more structured in a way.
Yeah.
So yeah, you're 100% right. Like a T-88 on our show is a big deal because our guys aren't saving the galaxy.
Right. They're not concerned about
they aren't even on the bridge.
Right. They're putting out a plasma fire because the ship is falling apart. Right.
Yeah, that they probably caused.
Right. By tinkering around. Right. Exactly. Yeah. No, it's very effective there. So, all right. So I'm going to ask you, I can't let you go without asking this question. And this is a boring question and I have to ask it because people want to know. Okay. So any word, any update on the international release of the show?
I have an update on it.
Okay.
I cannot give you guys an update on it. I can say that I was very surprised how long it has taken, but we are aware of it. It is clearly something that we want to have happen, and there should be news about it fairly soon, you know? Yeah. But at the same time, it is like, look, man, I make the show. Like,
I know.
In the middle of the show getting made, Viacom, which is a very big company. I don't know if you've heard of it.
Maybe I've heard of it. Yeah, reference.
Purchase
before.
CBS, which is a very big company. Don't know if you've heard of that one. You know, and then the amount of people, like, All Access is very different from CBS Network, which is different from CBS Studios, and you know, these are conversations that I am involved in, but that I am not, like, you know, in charge of, in a way.
Yeah, you're getting BCC'd on the emails.
Like,
right, yeah.
Yeah, right. If I'm lucky, yeah. There's like there's lots of lawyers and there's lots of different players and stuff, but if it helps demystify it a little bit, the first inklings I heard about people being interested in taking it international was from when we presented it at San Diego Comic-Con.
Gotcha. Okay.
That's how long this stuff takes. And I wish I could say I knew, you know, the details of stuff, but like, you would be surprised, like, even when it's not a big deal like this, like when you're just trying to get like a deal made for just yourself, like this stuff can take insanely longer than you expect. So everybody out there in international land, we totally hear you. We absolutely want to get it to you. We are desperately working on it. Nobody is more obviously literally invested in getting it to you guys than us.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm sure if there was a podcast called International Distribution Deals and the stuff that goes into it, that there would be some other person from the network or the business affairs world that could dryly explain using spreadsheets and stuff, like why really it took as long as it did.
Yeah, terrible PowerPoints. Yeah.
But we are working on it, and you should be hearing something about it relatively soon. You know, right when at the very beginning of all of this, people were asking me, and I was like, I wouldn't worry about it. And people were like, that means tomorrow.
Mike McMahan said not to worry about it.
Not to worry about it. And then I didn't. But guess what? I should have. I'm like, oh, I shouldn't have said that, because what I meant was we're working on it, but I didn't mean to imply any timeline. You know, I think that one thing is that Lower Decks is very, very new, and it's very unlike any other show that has this deal. Yeah. You know, because like Picard and Discovery are split up on different platforms too internationally, right?
Oh, yeah.
I believe they are.
No, they are.
So
one is Amazon, one's Netflix. Yeah.
So I don't even know in international terms, like the difference between live action shows that are a certain amount of length and animated shows that are a certain amount of length and da 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 da. Yeah. So all the international people who are frustrated, I love you so much for wanting the show. Like I really, really do. And it kills me. I'm constantly talking to Secret Hideout being like, let's just do it. Let's just go rogue, you know? And they're
just
like,
put it up on YouTube.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, you know, if it were up to me, everybody would have it. But luckily, it's best for the show that it isn't up to me, because whatever better deal they get, it's all going to go back into the show. So, you know, I totally hear that everybody's frustrated. I'm really happy that you're frustrated, because it means you're excited for the show. I know that the internet doesn't give a fuck about your feelings, so you've had to see Riker and Troy. Listen, do you know how hard it was to keep Frakes from saying that he was in Lower Decks? I can't imagine.
He's a spoiler. He's a spoiler machine. Yeah.
He is. I love him to death, and he's excited, and it's, you know.
I love him because he spoils shit all the time.
Oh, I'm sure you love him.
I love him. He's great for the channel. Yeah.
Yeah, and, you know, and for mine too. But you know, if it were up to me, you guys would be seeing it at the exact same time as everybody else, so you could be experiencing it without having to avoid hashtags and stuff like that. I totally think everybody is deservedly frustrated. Hey, every time I have to wait for a new season of British Baking Show, I'm very upset. Like I'm tweeting at the creators of Great British Baking Show little pictures of pirate flags being like, you want this? You want me to do this? And I'm like,
yeah, it's your move, British Baking Show.
Like,
yeah, right.
Yeah. I'm like, okay, I know what this gif of the Yar matey guy is. I know what you're telling me, but you're an adult. You can make your own choices.
Like, I know. Yeah. And that's kind of like, first off, I appreciate you answering that question. I know you probably get asked that probably more than anything else. But I mean, I don't think anybody blames you for it. And I think the construct that the show, which I do want to ask you about very quickly, the construct of the show having to get forwarded in the scheduling because of COVID and because it had messed up, it screwed up the scheduling. Like, you were supposed to be after Discovery and instead you came before.
Yeah, I don't know if that really screwed up the scheduling as much as, we were just trying to pick the perfect time to drop it.
Yeah.
And originally, like, Discovery would have all been done, and the perfect time to drop it would have been this whole audience for Discovery is there. The next episode they see is the first episode of Lower Decks. That would have been really helpful just because we know that people watching Discovery love Star Trek. Like, that's really it, And
I would argue
having to swap it earlier.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, like, the benefit of doing it earlier is that it was like trial by fire. Like, we were the first new Star Trek in a very weird year while we're all trapped inside. And, it was a different kind of interesting thing. It was, I think, we had a lot of challenges to get it done that fast. I'm really proud of the work we did, but we didn't agree to do anything. Nobody told us a date we had to drop it by that we didn't know the show would be great. You know what I mean? Like, we agreed to a date to drop it that we were doing daily calls of being like, okay, we managed to get this amount of audio. We can now guarantee 3 episodes will be done in time. Like, we were really, like, there was no rushing the show. The show had to look as good as it, we'd been working for years on the show. We weren't going to make it not look great,
Right. You got to put your best foot forward there for sure. Cause that's your first season, and if it sucks, then that's,
and also, like, all the work went into it. We were going to finish it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, we weren't going to rush anything, but yeah, I'm actually really happy because, like, it felt like our finale was so fucking fun. And then going into those great episodes, the first couple episodes of Discovery was like, it was just a great time to be a Trekkie.
No, and that's what I was going to say is I would argue that even though I know that it was a lot of extra work for you guys and obviously for the Discovery team as well, because they had to switch to remote working and teleworking and stuff to finish their stuff up. I would argue that the way it planned out, the way it actually ended up was actually better. We had the whole 23 weeks of Star Trek, which was something very unique, very cool. I'm glad that the marketing team picked up on that and put them back to back. Super smart decision there. And like, I felt like Lower Decks put in a lot of good faith with people who feel certain kinds of way about Discovery. And when they sat down to watch Lower Decks, I felt like it was a bit more of a, even though it's such a strangely different show, it felt a lot more connected to things that we knew because it had a lot of those little nostalgia bits to kind of consume each episode. And, and obviously capping it off with the Rikers and the Titan, I felt like really rocketed people to a different level of excitement coming into Discovery. And then everyone was, of course, very excited about Discovery because this is all this new, crazy timeline stuff,
cool stuff.
Right. So people stepping into that, I actually think that instead of you guys trying to ride that wave of Discovery ending and you guys trying to catch on to that, I actually felt like it was the perfect build up to the wave, like you created that wave for Discovery leading into it with this whole 23 weeks of Star Trek. So I actually think it worked out really well. I do.
Well, I hope so. I mean, it was a blast. Like, as we got deeper into the season, seeing more and more people being like, wait, the show's not getting bad. It's getting better and better. I love the show. Like, seeing people love it. Like, we were all the writers and all the creators and everybody were all calling each other, just being like, oh my God, they loved the episode. Thank God. It was so fun. We loved it, but you can never predict this stuff. And just, especially 8, 9, and 10, like, once people saw 10 and just lost their freaking minds, I was just so happy. And it put us in because we were, as those episodes were airing, we were writing season 2. Like, we didn't know if season 2 takes that momentum and keeps it going. So if people had hated the ending of season 1,
you'd be like,
we would have been writing. Yeah, we'd be like, well, we're pretty in deep. Do we change it or we just do what we want? Yeah. And so, it was this dopamine hit of, all this stuff we're doing for season 2, all these, it's so funny. Like, the internet and just the amount of people watching a show, they become a writer's room. It's like, there's a million minds that are all trying to predict and all want to see stuff. So, like, a lot of people being like, wow, I really wish we could have seen more Tendi standalone or Tendi and Mariner and that kind of stuff. It's like, those are literally conversations we had in the season 2 writer's room before those episodes aired, but when we had seen them. And then we see people echoing it and we're like, we're like, wow, these people are paying attention, and they're going to love season 2, but they're going to be grouchy at us until it airs.
Yeah, no, which I understand. I think it's a good barometer check, because, it's like, okay, so if you guys are having the conversations internally being so close to the production, and then we as the audience members are having similar feedback, it's like, okay, so everyone's kind of on the same creative thought wave, and that's a good barometer check to make sure that you guys are actually on the money with not only what you're thinking, but also what the audience is thinking, that you guys are heading in the right direction, which I think is great. I think it's really great. And, I would say, like, the feel goods that I think, that people had at the end, the finale, like, it's very rare that Star Trek trends on Twitter. I'm very much involved with Twitter. But it's very rare that Star Trek actually starts to trend, and it trended during Star Trek Day, during Discovery season premiere, and it trended very much so during the reveal of the Titan. The Titan was trending on Twitter.
I didn't know that. That's awesome.
Yeah, it did, because people were just that excited about it. And I remember, because I usually wake up in the mornings, and before work I'll watch the episode the first time. Like, I'll wake up, because I usually get up at like 5 a.m. So I watch it beforehand. And I remember I logged into my computer, and my feed was just Titan. So I'm like, okay, so I guess the Titan's in this episode. Thanks for that.
Then you probably watched it, and it's like Boimler says the Titan, like, or somebody says, like, Ransom's like, the Titan's in the system. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And then it's because the fun thing about the Titan too is that, like, the reason we brought it in, but our characters had already solved the problem of the episode. Like, they defeated the Shax defeats the Pakleds. And then to get the Titan in, we had to bring in 3 more Pakleds. So you were like, oh, fuck, there's no way to get out of this. 1 Pakled was bad enough, 1 ship. And then I think we call them Pakled battle Harpies, by the way. I'm not sure if that's...
That's not translated on screen,
I'm not sure if that's out in the world yet, but that's what we've been calling
Now we know.
introduction.
Now we know.
But because the Pakleds are involved in second season, and it's a lot of fun world building and stuff. But bringing in the Titan, like, bringing in more Pakleds just to be able to bring the Titan, because that's just fucking good TV. Like,
it was, and I really fucking thought that you were gonna do a 2-parter. I thought you were gonna do like a TNG style, where, like, when the other Pakled ships show up, these Harpy ships, then they show up and they all get the grapples on the Cerritos. I thought it was gonna cut to black, and you were gonna leave us in suspense. And I remember sitting there thinking to myself, I'm like, this is it. Maybe we'll get like I thought at that moment that maybe there was like a season 2 like teaser.
Yeah, but instead you got 3 endings. You got the Titan.
Yep.
You have sick bay on the station.
Yep.
You've got the bar, and then you have Boimler's betrayal.
Yes, exactly. Which is so messed up, and I can't wait to see how that plays out. Yeah,
Yeah, I'm not sure if he made the right decision, but we'll see. He really wanted it. He talked about it all season.
Mm-hmm. But it's funny too, because we already had, like, on the Vancouver, we had that one engineer that talked about what it's like to live on the ships that are always doing the big important stuff.
Yeah, and imagine if Mariner was pissed at him.
Right. Yeah, I know. So, yeah, I'm excited to see it. I know a lot of people are very excited for the second season. I think probably after the high of the Titan, I felt like the energy really was, man, shit, now I have to wait like a whole nother year before I get to see more of this show, which I think is what you want.
Luckily, I can tell you, 100%. You don't want the opposite of, thank God we have a year before more of this stuff shows up. I can tell you right now, we are so deep in production. Not only is it all written, but I've got episode 209 to watch this week.
Nice.
In animatic form. And we've already sent, I believe, the first 4 episodes to color. So, like, we are buzzing along, like, you guys will definitely get a new season next year, God willing, that nothing crazier happens than already happened.
I don't know if I can handle anything else. Yeah.
For real. But yeah, it's a really great second season. I'm really excited for you guys to see it. And yeah, you don't know what's coming. It's really fun.
Yeah, I'm very much looking forward to it. I know a lot of other people are as well, and I'm glad to hear that it's proceeding forward. I think a lot of us were theorizing that because you guys had done such an amazing and efficient job with getting the first season done in this remote construct, that rolling into the second one wasn't going to be a big hurdle. Whereas like, you know, like for like Discovery, who's filming season 4 right now, they're dealing with all of these COVID restrictions on set and all this stuff like that. So I'm sure it's a fucking nightmare down there trying to keep everybody safe. Which I appreciate the fact that they're still filming, because I obviously want more of that. But yeah, so they're dealing with hurdles.
It's hurdles, but they're keeping everybody safe and they're keeping the quality up and everybody's proud of it. For us, it's really just, you know, animation takes a long time. Like, we were finishing the last half of the season while you guys were watching the first half last time, you know? So for us,
that's crazy.
We rolled right into the new season as we were finishing up, you know, as I was finishing sound mixing and edits on the finale of the first season before it aired, we were writing the beginning of the second season. So, you know, it's one of those things where, like, yeah, not everything can be South Park where they can kind of get it together so quickly, but it's also not like a Pixar movie where it's going to take 5 years and then you'll find out there's another fucking movie about ants at the same time.
Right.
You know, and also luckily, since none of our stuff is ripped from the headlines, like, it gives us enough time to be like, between every season, we all do a huge rewatch of Star Trek, you know, and we find new things that we're like, oh, we should have done that, you know? And we build out our world too. Like, there's stuff that, you know, we're building the Star Trek galaxy out a little bit more too, you know,
which is great. You know, I mean, that's gotta be, I know I'm talking your ear off, but I can't imagine the feeling that you're having, because you're literally fucking trailblazing Canon. Like, you're trailblazing right now.
Well, now that people like the show, it feels fucking great.
You were a little nervous before.
I'm trying to make everybody a great show. I'm trying to make a show I'm proud of. Like, you know, I promise you guys that there's going to be episodes that you hate. There's going to be episodes that you love, but you don't get the episodes that you love without the ones you hate. And we're never making one that doesn't click with you on purpose.
Yeah.
Every episode is a swing. We're trying to do stuff, you know, you're taking chances, and I don't even think there's going to be any episode you hate. Like, I don't think we've got any, like, famously bad, like, put this on the list of famously unwatchable episodes. Again, like, that's where, like, for people who are like, oh, I love this show, I don't know why they did this thing. It's like, well, because the show you love was made by people taking chances, you know?
No, yeah, so which makes sense, you know, and I think that's, you know, I think people are understanding of that. And I said this a lot during my reviews of Lower Decks, which is because a lot of people were trying to compare it to Discovery in terms of quality. And I was like, you can't really compare them because they're so widely different shows. And Picard too, like, they were trying to compare it to Picard too. And it's like, you can't compare them because they're so wildly different. And my thing with, like, and I talked to you about this as well, which is, it felt like every episode of Lower Decks was my new favorite episode. Every single one that came out, I was like, okay, forget last week's. This is my new favorite one. And, you know, it's that quality builds. And yeah, there's going to be episodes that kind of maybe don't feel as impactful to some viewers, but right. Like, as long as you're taking risks and taking chances and trying to expand more and bring us something new, I think people will still, I think for the most part, a viewing audience is going to respect that. You know, I think they will.
Yeah, man. I think that's great. And, you know, a reporter asked me, like, before Lower Decks premiered, they were like, are there any episodes of Star Trek that people should watch before they see it? And I was like, yeah, all of them.
Like, I remember that. I remember that quote. All 50 50 fucking years of it. Go.
And they were like, yeah, but for real. And I was like, no, for real, all of them.
Right.
You know, you never know what you're going to get. And, like, I think that for people that are going out of their way to try to find fault with the show, they feel like we're digging around in old binders being like, Roga Danar, who's this guy? But instead, it's like, it's coming from a bunch of people who love Star Trek, and we're all watching it together. And then we'll be like, oh, we all watched this episode we loved that aired 20 years ago, but we're going to breathe new life into it because we're having a blast with it. Like, that's, you know, and like the Zahn reference came from, we were all reading the 50-year mission books, like the interview kind of history of Star Trek books.
Yeah.
And like the whole section about phase 2 was just getting us rolling. Like, we were loving it. So I don't know. I'm really glad that it hit. And by the way, I noticed, like, right off at the beginning, like, I know that you're one of our first fans because you're one of the first people I've seen be accused of being a CBS shill.
Oh yes, so, I'm shill town right now. Oh yeah, and our interview is not going to help. It's not going to help quell that rumor, but yeah.
Well, there was one time too where somebody accused me of being a shill, and I was like, yeah. I make a show on CBS, you fucking cuckoo banana.
Yeah. What do you do? What are you shilling for the corporation for?
What are you doing? Getting paid to say you like Lower Decks? Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
Like, you know, there were a lot of people who watched the premiere who immediately were like, "Oh my god, it's not bad. It's actually Star Trek. This is hard to explain." And I think that's part of this show's greatest hurdle. That's part of this show's greatest mountain to climb as more episodes come out, is that it is hard to explain. It's hard to describe to other people. Because if you're a person who loves Star Trek and you've seen every episode and you watch this show, 9 times out of 10, I hear people go, wow, I love this show. Yep. It's too bad other people won't get it.
Yes.
And I'm like, it's hard for people to get out of that mental bubble of just because they know everything.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean that people who know nothing won't enjoy it, because it doesn't rely on that stuff, you know? And I think that, like, if it were up to me, if there was a switch to flip where everybody who watched it and loved it could just tell people, I watched and I loved this show, without a caveat of, but you might not. And I think that it's an impossible switch to flip, because when you are recommending something, that is making yourself vulnerable. Right? Like it's putting yourself out there for somebody to go, hey, I watched that thing you said was good. I didn't like it. So now I'm making a character judgment on you. And next time you tell me something's good, I'm going to say, no. Well, what if it isn't?
Yeah.
There's proof.
You're a fucking idiot. Right. Yeah.
But luckily, entertainment is subjective, people. I promise you, if you tell people that you love the show and it's fun, and you let them decide, that you'll be surprised how many people might actually get drawn into Star Trek, and then you can say, let's do a rewatch of TNG, and suddenly you've got a new TNG friend. Like that's what happened with the writers room. Like we brought in a lot of people who had never seen TNG before, and you know, TOS and the rest of it, and we've all been watching it together, and it's crazy how many of them have become way bigger Trek nerds than I am, because that's, you know, it's something that they just are passionate about from watching it with other people that are passionate about it. So
right, it kind of bleeds across.
Hopefully, I just hope as more episodes come out, there's more opportunity for people to give it a chance. You know,
I think it will. I do. Because as you already know this, like the first season of any animated show in particular is, as you know, very challenging. I remember even when Rick and Morty's first season came out, it was not the global phenomenon that it is now. It was a very obscure show that a lot of people did not like, and I just
hadn't heard of.
Right. They were just like Rick and Morty, and then people didn't really understand. Like they were like, that's a weird name. I don't want to watch that. It's kind of silly.
That's an old man who's got slime on his face.
Right. And like, this little kid, and he's like crying, and it's like it's like this weird thing. But now I can't go to a store without seeing Rick and Morty merchandise just puked over every aisle. You know, they got Rick and Morty.
Yeah. There's like pickle tampons everywhere.
Right. Exactly. Right. Exactly. Right. Exactly.
Yeah,
so
I watch old Simpsons with my 6-year-old now, and there's all these jokes I never caught before, where Homer will say something like, I would never just okay my image being pasted on T-shirts, you know, and stuff that at the time it clearly was.
Yeah.
No, I know it's true, but at the same time, like it is a hard show to explain, because it is so specific and beloved and beholden to something we all love, but at the same time is just a fun show. And you know, there's also a part of me that's like, gosh, I hope we continue in this trajectory, because nothing makes me geek out more than the thought of like books and comic books and toys and video games, and just like getting more fun, like getting to do what I did with Lower Decks, but like making another thing that feels like that it's like, because I also love artifacts of Star Trek. That's why I wrote that fake guide. Like I love the thought of there being a Lower Decks comic book series, and there being Lower Decks like spin-off novels about characters that maybe wouldn't get a new episode. Like you wanted to see a Ransom backstory or something cool that like we could start playing with that stuff too. But
I want a field manual. I want a playbook manual of the United Federation of Characters. That's what I want. I love that fucking joke. I want that.
I love that joke too. That character is so
Oh,
funny.
Hello. I didn't see your beam in there.
Jr.? Oh, yeah. Oh, thank you.
So good.
Played by, of course, Eugene Cordero again.
Yeah.
Funny. Yeah. Anyway. But yeah, well, listen, man, this was great. I'm sure whoever's listening to this is like looking at their watch being like,
oh my God, these guys have talked for 2 hours.
Like,
I know.
How long could Mike McMahan talk about liking Worf? Well, guess what? It's forever.
Yeah, forever, motherfucker. This is only part 1.
Sorry.
Yeah, of our 14-hour
I should have a Star Trek show. My bad.
Yeah, if you love it so much, just go make your own show. Right, yeah.
No, but dude, it's been too long. I've wanted to talk to you for ages. I'm actually glad we did it now, so that we've had some distance, and so I could give you a little kind of. I mean, hey, nobody else knows there's a Pakled battle harpy out there except you right now. I'm sure.
That's
whoever's on the line from CBS is like, oh shit, the battle harpy. Who told them?
Those motherfucker. That goddamn. You're gonna be on another 2-hour phone call.
You're the new Frakes. You're the new Frakes, Mike.
Yeah, you're gonna. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But listen, man, I mean, thank you so much for always supporting the show. Like, it's so hard to launch a show. It's so hard to launch a Star Trek show, much less this Star Trek show. And, you know, your support and just like, and your joy at watching it, like that's what you dream of in an audience. And I really appreciate it. Thank you. That's why I agreed to do this, is like, I just wanted to chat with somebody that I know had enjoyed something that we worked on for years. And even if you had some tough questions for me, like about international and the sand in the replicator.
You're not letting the sand in the replicator. I'm going to tweet you the fucking picture now.
Listen, man, you're watching the show and you're leaning forward and you're appreciating it. And I appreciate you doing that. So thank you.
Well, thank you, man, for doing this show and for doing this interview with me. I absolutely do appreciate it. I know the listeners are going to appreciate hearing you gush about the show, and I think that they're really going to enjoy it. And I do want to just go ahead and say, if you're not hearing it often enough, you know, really thank you, big thank you to all the work that you guys are doing. It's literally making a whole new golden era of Star Trek for all of us Trekkies, man. And it really is great. And I think a lot of people love it.
There's no golden era without people watching it and enjoying it. And it's, you know, thank you for everybody who watched it and gave it a chance. And if you didn't love the first 2 episodes, like, thank you for sticking with it and checking it out and talking about it and finding new friends to watch it. That's hard stuff, especially for a first season show. And there's no golden era without the fans wanting to actually watch it and being engaged and, you know, clicking on CBS All Access and subscribing. Like, this is a new era of Trek where there's a hurdle to even watch the show, and you guys are leaping that hurdle and you're telling other people. And it's, you know, without CBS All Access, there's no Star Trek shows that feel this different, you know, and like what you were saying earlier, like I love that there's been so many weeks of new Trek, but like, let's get that to 52. Fuck it. You know, like,
yeah, exactly. I'm with it.
Let's not even take Thanksgiving off. Like,
yeah, Alex, come on.
let's have, Alex, not enough new shows. Let's, you know, 52 weeks of Star Trek shows. I've said this before, but I wish that Star Trek was a municipal thing, provided like that 1 cent of everybody's tax bill went to making new Star Trek shows, and that we all had a box in our house called the Star Trek box, so you could just get it for free. Like, I just want Star Trek to be municipal. I want it to be constant and changing, but also like careful and awesome. And you know, I'm so excited for you guys to see Prodigy. I think those guys are brilliant. I have a 6-year-old and a 2-year-old, and
yeah,
you know, there's the show is really special, and everything else that I can't even talk about. Like, there's so much thought and there's so many smart people working on this stuff that it just really does feel like this is a very uniquely Star Trek expression. Like, to have multiple concurrent airing shows that are so different, you know, at the same time, like, there's some stuff that's kind of catching up to that, kind of doing a similar thing, but like the streaming era, like All Access, anybody who bristles at the thought of like, oh, it's another app, like, I get it, but that's the 1 cent, that's the 1 cent tax to get Star Trek all year. Like, to me,
right,
that's the tax I'm paying to be like, when I get to go in and say, oh, here's the Star Trek show I dream of doing, without All Access, that never happens. you know, like there's
exactly.
just,
yeah.
And I know it's like, you know, listen, I've seen you buy the plate with Tuvok on it, you guys. I know you've got the money for more Tuvok, right? So like,
I can't say anything. I have the $800 Borg Cube computer case sitting behind me. You know?
See?
Yeah, right.
Okay,
right.
yeah. Like I've been known to purchase the Hero Collector models. I've got a Combadger 3, but like, you know, I'm so lucky. Like the Golden Age is not because of me. It's because of you guys. It's because of All Access. It's because of you guys giving that a chance. It's because of Disco especially, and Secret Hideout knowing good Trek when they hear it. Like I didn't even pitch it to them. I went in and just talked to them about it, and they basically bought the show from me in the room without me having gone in for a pitch, just talking about why I love Star Trek. And
which is
if you're running
awesome.
a business, yeah, like, you know, I see all these people who are like, Kurtzman, you know, and it's like, all right, pirate. But listen, the guy knows when he's like, I know personally that when you sit down and you talk to the guy about why you love Star Trek and what incites you to want to tell stories in that world, and if it's something that's really coming from a place of honesty and excitement, the guy knows the difference between that and people just trying to get a job. Yeah. Like that's a really unique talent, and I'm so lucky to know Aaron Byers, who works with Alex and Heather at Secret Hideout, to have brought me in, and like it is just such a difficult world to get to do this stuff in, that like without you guys watching it and without All Access making it possible in Secret Hideout, like this stuff could never happen. So thank you for watching all this stuff. It's awesome. Because I want to see new Star Trek too, so keep watching it.
I know. Just keep watching, keep doing it, and I know we just got to keep going. And I'm glad to hear that about you know, the Alex being the steward essentially of the franchise currently, along with many other people, but being kind of like the chief steward of it all. It's good to hear that he cares so much. And I think that comes across a lot in his interviews and stuff like that. I think people give him a kind of a bad rap, but
like, I don't think people say this enough, but like, he's very easy to talk to about Star Trek. Like, it's like talking to him about Star Trek is like, it's like when you and I talk about it. You know what I mean? Like, he's one of us. He's in charge of a lot more than I am. And it's just, that is the kind of brain you want to have be on top of this, not the kind of brain that's like running the numbers of it, more the kind of brain that's like telling, like, he's a writer. You know what I mean? Like
he's a creative,
he gets stories.
He gets it.
Yeah. And I think that's another lucky thing for me, that a person who writes, who can read a script and be like, you know what would, like, one of the notes he gave me about the pilot is like, you want to end this scene on these people smiling. They've gotten to a place where they can be happy again. You know what I mean? Like, those kind of notes are what you want, not like, I want to see the Enterprise. You know?
How much is this going to cost? How much shit can you fit in there?
That was, but you don't want to hear that.
It was a very good. It was almost Q-esque in some regards. Mon ami. Yeah. Right. So, all right, man. I appreciate it so much. I've talked your ear off for 2 hours. Thank you again for coming on the show. I absolutely appreciate it. And hopefully we'll get you back on.
Season 2 airs, you can tell me what sand you've noticed, and we'll hash it out.
Don't worry, I'm gonna be tweeting at you all the errors I find. Don't worry. So,
all right.
But thanks again, man. I appreciate it.
Of course.